Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're embarking on an incredible journey through time to explore one of the most remarkable economic stories in modern history, the rise of Japan from a feudal, isolated nation to a global economic powerhouse. We'll cover the period from 1853, a pivotal year of change, all the way to the peak of its bubble economy in 1989. So, grab your notebooks, get comfortable, and let's dive into the fascinating history of the Japanese economy. Our story begins in 1853. For over 2 centuries, Japan had been under the policy of sakoku, or national seclusion, limiting contact with the outside world. The society was structured under the Tokugawa shogunate, a feudal military government. The economy was largely agrarian, based on rice, and internal trade was developing, but it was a world away from the industrial revolutions happening in the West. Then, everything changed. In that year, Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States Navy sailed his Black Ships into Edo Bay, which is now Tokyo Bay. His mission was to force Japan to open its ports to international trade. This event was a massive shock to the system. It exposed Japan's technological and military weakness compared to the West and ignited a period of intense internal debate and turmoil. The arrival of the West triggered the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate and led to the Meiji Restoration in 1868. This wasn't just a political change, it was a complete societal revolution. The new Meiji government recognized that to remain independent and avoid colonization, Japan had to modernize and fast. Their slogan was Fukoku Kyohei, meaning enrich the country, strengthen the army. So how did they do it? The Meiji leaders embarked on a massive project of state-led industrialization. They sent missions, like the famous Iwakura mission, to Europe and the United States to study everything: technology, political systems, education, and industry. They hired thousands of foreign advisors, known as Oyatoi Gaikokujin, to bring modern expertise to Japan. The government invested heavily in infrastructure. They built the country's first railway line, connecting Tokyo and Yokohama, and established modern postal and telegraph systems. They standardized the currency, creating the yen, and founded a modern banking system, with the Bank of Japan established in 1882. These were the foundational pillars needed for a modern capitalist economy. In the industrial sector, the government established model factories in strategic industries like textiles, particularly silk and cotton, and heavy industries like shipbuilding, mining, and munitions. These were initially state-owned, but were later sold off at very low prices to private entrepreneurs. This privatization gave rise to the powerful business conglomerates known as zaibatsu, names you might recognize like Mitsubishi and Mitsui. These family-controlled groups would come to dominate the Japanese economy, with interests spanning from banking and mining to shipping and manufacturing. Education was also key. The Meiji government implemented a compulsory education system for all children. The goal was to create a disciplined, literate, and skilled workforce that could adapt to the new industrial age. This long-term investment in human capital was absolutely crucial for Japan's future success. By the early 20th century, Japan had made incredible progress. It had become a significant regional power, demonstrated by its victories in the First Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War. Its economy was growing, exports were increasing, and it was the first non-Western nation to successfully industrialize. However, this rapid growth came with challenges. Japan lacked natural resources, making it heavily dependent on imports for things like oil and iron ore. This resource insecurity would become a major driver of its foreign policy in the coming decades, contributing to its expansionist ambitions in the 1930s and ultimately leading to its involvement in World War II. The war left Japan in ruins. Its cities were devastated, its empire was gone, and its economy was shattered. The Allied occupation, led by the United States from 1945 to 1952, brought radical reforms. The zaibatsu were broken up, land reform was implemented to empower tenant farmers, and a new constitution was written, which renounced war. It was from these ashes that the post-war economic miracle began. How did Japan recover so quickly and so spectacularly? Several factors came together. First, the reforms of the occupation, while initially disruptive, laid the groundwork for a more democratic and competitive economy. Second, the Cold War played a huge role. The Korean War, which started in 1950, was a massive stimulus for the Japanese economy. Japan became a crucial supply base for the UN forces, and American military procurement orders poured billions of dollars into Japanese industries. This was the special procurement boom that kick-started the recovery. Third, and perhaps most importantly, was the Japanese model of development. The government, particularly through the powerful Ministry of International Trade and Industry, or MITI, worked closely with private corporations. MITI would identify promising industries for the future, like steel, automobiles, and later electronics. It would then provide guidance, protect these infant industries from foreign competition with tariffs, and help them access cheap capital through the banking system. This wasn't central planning, but rather a form of collaborative, state-guided capitalism. Japanese companies themselves developed unique management practices. Concepts like lifetime employment, seniority-based wages, and enterprise unions created a stable and incredibly loyal workforce. Companies focused on long-term growth and market share rather than short-term profits. They adopted and perfected quality control methods, like the Kaizen philosophy of continuous improvement, which became world-famous. From the 1950s through the 1970s, Japan experienced double-digit annual GDP growth. The country transformed itself once again. It became a leader in shipbuilding, then steel production. By the 1970s, Japanese cars from Toyota and Honda, known for their fuel efficiency and reliability, began to flood global markets, especially after the oil shocks of that decade. By the 1980s, the world looked at Japan with a mixture of awe and anxiety. Japanese electronics companies like Sony and Panasonic dominated the consumer market with products like the Walkman and the VCR. Japanese banks were the largest in the world. The Tokyo Stock Exchange surpassed New York's in-market capitalization. It seemed like Japan had perfected capitalism and was on a trajectory to become the world's #1 economy. This period, known as the bubble economy, was fueled by rampant speculation. The yen had appreciated significantly after the 1985 Plaza Accord, but the Bank of Japan responded by slashing interest rates. This cheap money flooded the economy, and people poured it into stocks and real estate. At the peak in 1989, the land underneath the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was said to be worth more than all the real estate in California. It was a time of extreme confidence and extravagance. But as we all know, bubbles are destined to burst, and the bursting of this one in the early 1990s would plunge Japan into a long period of economic stagnation known as the Lost Decade. But that's a story for another video. From the forced opening by the black ships to the dizzying heights of the bubble economy, Japan's journey is a powerful testament to a nation's capacity for change, resilience, and strategic planning. It's a complex story of state guidance, corporate innovation, and the sheer hard work of its people. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical deep dive. I hope you found it interesting. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to see covered. Until next time, take care.